Live in the Lucky Number 7 Lounge, this is Dine, Drink Vegas, the podcast where everybody's stuck at home, wishing they were in the land of neon lights and bad decisions. And you have stumbled across episode number 52, Customer Service, Part 3, The Good, the Bad, and the W. Also, we're going to bring you some news stories we thought were interesting and the drink of the day. But before we can do any of that, we've got to welcome back the founder of Dine, Drink Travel and Dine, Drink Vegas himself. Yes, of course, I'm me, the high roller formerly of the High Plains, the leader and sometimes complainer in the luxury lounge, the king of comps, the Alabama slammer. Of course, I mean Bill. Bill, good evening. How are you? And welcome home from Vegas.
Thank you very much. I'm well, although I desperately need to drink this cocktail that we have in front of us because it has been a day. How are you, John?
I am doing great, and we have both made our cocktails. And talking before the show, we both made them to spec. So,
which is weird. Has that ever happened before, where we both made actually the exact recipe that the run sheet called for?
I think the last time it did, it was on your drink that you invented, and I did make it exactly to spec, and I gave that one to my wife, and I had tasting notes on it, but the one you saw me with, I had played with, and I did get chided for that, but I did make it to spec technically. But yeah, normally one of us zigs where the recipe zags. So Bill, normally I introduce the drink of the day. Since this was your pick, would you like to do the honors, or would you like me to take the normal role?
I would like you to take your normal role because you are better at describing the drinks than I am. And honestly, all I saw was an interesting recipe, and I figured you'd know what to do with it. So take it away, John.
Sure. So this is called the Left Hand, and it's a riff on the Negroni, or really more closely the Boulevardier, because it's almost exactly a Boulevardier. But this one was invented by New York City bartender Sam Rossi, the same guy who did the Paper Plane, which we did a few episodes ago, which Bill and I both loved. So let me give you the ingredient rundown, and I'll note where this differs from a Boulevardier, because if you are a Boulevardier drinker, this is going to sound real familiar. 1.5 ounces of bourbon, no brand specified, 0.75 ounces of Campari, 0.75 ounces of sweet vermouth. Now, let me stop there. In a Boulevardier, it would only be 1.25 ounces of bourbon and the full ounce of the Campari and the vermouth. So we're dialing down our Campari and vermouth, and we're ramping up our bourbon. Okay. To that, you're going to add 3 dashes of chocolate bitters, and you're going to put that into your cocktail tumbler. Stir that up, strain it with, stir it up with ice, of course. Strain it out over 1 large ice cube, and then garnish with a brandied cherry. Now, if this was the Boulevardier, instead of chocolate bitters, you would have used orange bitters, and you would have garnished with an orange peel. But we're going with chocolate, and we have a little less of the modifiers, a little more bourbon. Bill, what do you think of the Left Hand?
So I like it, and I enjoy the chocolate bitters. I very much enjoy the bourbon to Campari ratio here, again, rather than a Boulevardier. I do think, though, that after you and I finish recording tonight, because it turns out I may have a second cocktail with my evening, I'm going to go make basically the Boulevardier recipe, but to these proportions, right?
Right.
Like, I enjoy the Campari, I'm enjoying the sweet vermouth. I'm just enjoying having less of it, and I think I would enjoy it with orange bitters and an orange accent rather than the chocolate. The chocolate's good, and I put in exactly the right number of drops and all that. I don't know, I prefer orange flavor. What do you think about it, John?
So I think I'm with you. If I was going to do this mixture of the sweet vermouth, and by the way, what vermouth did you go with?
So I wound up going with, I don't guess technically it is a vermouth. I went with a Lillet Rouge, the Lillet Red, because that's standard what I use when I need a sweet red vermouth. I like it better.
Yeah, I do too, but I couldn't find it, so I went with the Dolan, whatever. What bourbon did you go with?
I went with Old Forester, which is not my favorite bourbon, but it's my favorite mixing bourbon because it's perfectly good, but it's at a price I can get my head around. And if I make this is not a complicated cocktail to make, right? Like this isn't my
No.
normal complaint about why are we putting 8 ingredients in this. This is perfectly simple. But there are, 3 other liquids in there plus the cherry. So with all of those things, I didn't want to spend the money on a really good bourbon. Does that
Right.
make sense? I
It does.
also
It
like
does.
well, and you know that normally if I'm just sipping bourbon, I prefer a wheated bourbon. But given all of the other ingredients, I thought something with just a tiny undertone of rye, at least more than, say, my standard Maker's Mark or something, I thought that would be helpful.
And I use Old Granddad 7 bottled and bond 100 proof for the same reason. I wanted something closer to the rye end of things, but still a bourbon because that's what I called for. I think if I was going to make this again, I would actually make the Boulevardier instead of this cocktail. My deal with this cocktail is that with the chocolate notes, that really plays up the sweet vermouth, and you're really more in Manhattan territory. And then that grapefruity essence of the Campari sort of just sticking out there in the wind in a weird way. I think if I want Campari and whiskey, I'm going to make the Boulevardier and get that orange twist. But what I might do next time is skip the Campari and make myself a chocolate Manhattan. And I think I would go ahead and jump all the way to a rye. And Bill, I know that you're generally not a rye fan, but hear me out. One of the flavor notes that you will pick up in rye that you rarely get in a high rye bourbon is a chocolate note. And I think with the chocolate bitters and a good sweet vermouth, I think going for a chocolate bitters Manhattan without the distraction of the Campari would have landed me in a better space. So this is good, and it's in the spot between Manhattan and Boulevardier, but I don't think I want the in between. I don't want to be in, it taint the Boulevardier, it taint the Manhattan. I think I want to be one or the other. I don't think I needed these two drinks combined. Not that it's bad. It's just, yeah, I think I would have rather made a more definitive flavor statement one way or the other.
I think that is totally fair.
But I'm glad you found it, and I'm glad I tried it because it is an interesting cocktail. So hats off to you for picking.
No,
So
absolutely.
let's jump into the main story. You and I just got back from a trip in Vegas. I was there for 3 nights and you for 4. We're probably going to milk this for 4 or 5 podcasts because we can. But what I wanted to start with tonight was not so much our view of the W as a property in the rooms. We'll do that in a future episode. And spoiler alert, the W is a beautiful hotel. But I wanted to pick up on your customer service story that we've touched on 2 previous episodes. So let me quickly see if I can sum up and tell me if I got this wrong. And then I want you to finish the story for the listeners. So you originally booked back in the spring connecting rooms for you and our buddy Mike. You got a pretty decent deal, but when I got an even better deal rebooking, you decided to do the same thing. Now, listeners, we often advise that you can check rates again. Here's the caveat. If you book with an MGM Rewards offer, you cannot see if the rates have changed on your booking dates because you can only use that offer once on a given set of dates. So what you have to do is cancel your current reservation. And then the problem with that is you run the risk that prices went up instead of down, or that you passed over a month and your offer has changed with MGM. And so a lot of times you get a better deal by canceling and rechecking, but sometimes you don't. And you fell in to the latter category. So you had to book again. Wasn't a great deal. You called in. The phone agent was helping you, promised you a price, booked the first of your 2 rooms. All of a sudden, magically couldn't match that promise. Negotiated a really bad deal. You got off the phone. You weren't happy. You had rooms. And thus began about a 6-week journey of phone, email, and even snail mail until finally in customer service part 2 about 3 episodes ago now. You got a deal that wasn't good. It wasn't everything the phone agent originally promised, but it was a deal you could live with, and you had your 2 connecting rooms for the W, though at a price that you didn't think was fair, and I agreed with you. Do I have the story right so far?
You do. Everything you said is accurate. The one critical detail in there is that I paid extra money for guaranteed connecting rooms. And it was specifically used the word guarantee with no limit, no definition, no asterisk. And then in the final email, verified that they were guaranteed connecting rooms, which is super important because me and our buddy Mike wanted to be in the same space, but wanted our own separate bedrooms. And that's traditionally what we've done on this trip. Is Mike and I have had a 2-bedroom suite, which is where the group gathers to have drinks and watch football and have deep, important philosophical conversations about how we can be better husbands and fathers and men.
And so that was the plan all along. That was always the mission. You went through hell and back, but you got it in writing, guaranteed, at a price that you weren't happy about, but you could live with. So that's where we left this at the end of customer service part 2. Let's pick up last Thursday when you actually went to check into the room.
So there were 2 problems. Actually, and let me back up. So I arrive and I had paid for the limo package and all that sort of stuff. And a host greets me outside. Hey, Bill, we're so happy you're here. There's a problem with your connecting rooms, but we put some food coupons in there. To which I said, what? And that guy promptly took me to the VIP lounge. And there were 2 problems. One, they didn't have connecting rooms for us. And 2, and when there's a mistake, I insist that somebody admit you just made a mistake. And they said that they had simply miscommunicated to me. And I had never actually been promised connecting rooms. And I eventually get a manager and I showed him the underlying text. He's like, well, we're sorry we miscommunicated. And I responded, you didn't miscommunicate. You communicated perfectly clearly. You're not honoring the deal.
Right.
And then it really troubled. So he went to look for something. He asked me to sit on the couch in the VIP lounge. I did. It really, really bothered me after that he, A, insists on continuing that language. And then B, he got within my physical space, kept drawing right up next to me. Never actually touched me, but it was super awkward and weird. And refused to acknowledge that I had a deal, saying that's not their policy. So I showed him where, I had it in writing, and he's like, well, we can't do that. So do you want me to stop at this point?
Yeah,
that does
sound like a them problem, right? So where does this go from there?
Well, and what really bothered me is the group which came in after me, they gave them connecting rooms. So, because I heard them do it, which means there were some connecting rooms, but for reasons which escaped me, they didn't have enough and decided not to give one, prioritized other customers, right? So eventually it wound up there weren't connecting rooms to be had. And eventually what happened, unless I was those other people, whose faces he didn't get in, literally he was within a foot of me after asking me to sit on the couch. It was some weird stuff. So eventually the deal he offers me is he says, I'm going to give you the first 2 nights for free out of the 4-night deal, which sounds like a great deal on the surface of it, but hold that thought. Because he couldn't print it out for me or give me anything in print, but he really wanted me out of the lounge. And at this point, I'm exhausted. And he said, I promise to call you later on this afternoon and, tell you the final total amount. And he did actually call me back within, 30 or 45 minutes and said, oh, well, I can't actually do that right now. It's going to be Saturday before I can do it. but I promised to call you Saturday, and then he didn't ever call me Saturday. So you remember I left pool day to go find it out. It turns out they eventually got around to making the adjustment. The first 2 nights really were free, but here was the problem with it. And on both of the rooms, to get the connecting, and they did waive the connecting room fee, yay. The problem was I had paid so much more for that second room to get in the same package that knocking off those first 2 nights effectively got us back to the deal I had in the first place. So I'm talking like he offered me some sort of a phenomenal deal. No, what you did was get me back to the original deal that I would have had we simply booked 2 separate rooms the whole time.
Right. Which is, yeah, let's just say graciously, this was a suboptimal resolution by MGM. MGM
where
Resorts
he
at
wouldn't.
the W, yeah.
Yeah, and he just wouldn't admit they weren't honoring a deal. He kept insisting there had never been a deal, and words mean things. So we'll talk about it on later episodes. We wound up having a lovely trip, and it is a beautiful property, but they didn't honor the deal, wouldn't admit they were going to honor a deal, made a big deal about making an exceptional customer service gesture. And to be clear, it could have been worse. It's just that effectively the amount of money they knocked off got me back to what I would have paid had we simply booked 2 separate rooms in the first place.
Right. Right. Which wasn't what you wanted. So you. And
you heard what the totals were.
Solution. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you heard what the totals were, and you're like, yeah, that's not an exceptional deal, Bill.
No.
It was I've spent a lot of money with MGM over the year. Rachel, sweetheart, if you're listening to this, I may have gone beyond my normal $3 budget. And over the years, it may now be at a total of like $4 that I've spent with MGM over the years. And it feels like the loyalty with that program is decidedly one way. And I'm not refusing to stay with them ever again because it's too big of a chunk of the strip. And particularly once the A's baseball stadium is built, that's going to be all the hotels which are in the immediate vicinity. But gosh, I sure do have an incentive to look at other places now. I mean, does that seem fair? Yeah, if somebody's offering me a better deal in the moment, I'm going to go take it.
Well, and it seems very apparent by what happened. The other people who got the connecting rooms that you didn't, and what I suspect is the root cause of all of this. You are a good customer. And we do talk about you being a high roller, and compared to me, you absolutely are. But nobody's going to call you a whale. And my guess is you got bumped.
Well, I mean, it's happened, but it's usually around the pool. Yeah.
You got bumped by whales because you're a good customer. And they'd like you to keep coming. But there's other people who are even better customers. And I think this goes back to the theme we've seen that MGM and Caesars and Fontainebleau and Resorts World have put all their egg into the premium travel basket. And there's only so many premium travelers out there. And they forget that upper middle class people and even middle class people, there's way more of us. Our money spends. And any individual one of us may not spend as much as a truly wealthy individual. But there's a lot of us, and it adds up. And I do think there is a sense that they do that. To that same point, I had a couple of MGM gift cards, 3 to be precise, and I did not know the exact amount of these gift cards. But that's not a problem, right? Anytime you have a bill and you need to pay with a gift card, Bill, what does the cashier, what does the cashier do with your gift card?
The cashier, the cashew, or whatever you're dealing with simply swipes it, and however much is on there gets taken off my bill, and they ask me for some other payment for the rest of the bill, which must be what happened to you, right, John?
No, they told me She very kindly took a coin out of her own pocket and scratched off the back numbers. And she pointed me to a very comfortable leather couch and gave me pen and paper so I could call the 800 number to get the exact dollar amount on each of these 3 gift cards so that then I could tell her exactly how much is on there, because for some reason she has to enter the dollar amount and then scan the gift card. And then the computer will tell her whether or not the dollar amount matches the gift card. And only then will the funds be applied. And it's almost as if MGM does not want the poors who might have been given a gift card by a family or friend, or who might have bought the gift card with, say, City Points, meaning that you're using some card other than the MGM credit card. And they would rather you not do that because reasons. And for a premium full service hotel, that felt like La Quinta doesn't do that to people. La Quinta, La freaking Quinta, which is Spanish for next to Denny's, can figure out how to scan a gift card and make it work, right? But the W, right? Luxury hotel brand from MGM Resorts, world-renowned leader in hospitality. Yeah, they are stumped by the gift card. So, again, we're going to talk about the room and the experience. It's a whole other thing. Phenomenal hotel, phenomenal room. We have a lot of glowing things to say about that, but tonight we really wanted to drill in on those experiences. I will say, Bill, that I got the better end of this experience. You went through way more drama than me, but I will say that when you pay for a luxury hotel, one of the things that you assume you're paying for is customer service that goes above and beyond. And in the most gracious language possible. The nicest way either of us could put this is that neither of us had service that even met the minimum bar. Holiday Inn would not have done this to us. La Quinta would not have done this for us. Motel 6, and I would rather stay in the snake-infested cabin that was formerly on your family's property before it met the bulldozer than stay in a Motel 6. But you know what I know? 2 things. Tom Modette left the light on for me, and those people can run a gift card, right? So, gotta say, for what you're charging MGM Resorts, do better on the customer service front, like for real.
And keep your deals.
One last topic of conversation. We made a big deal about you have converted me into the VIP lounge experience. $75 a night just to add that on to your stay. The hours are now limited from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Meaning that if you get up early, you're not getting your free coffee. And if you would like a glass of wine, a beer, or a Diet Pepsi, or a cold bottled water on your way up to your room at a reasonable hour, not asking them to stay up till 1 or 2, but 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, you're not getting that at your VIP lounge either. Bill, do you still feel like that VIP lounge is worth it?
Sort of, but not for the reasons you would predict. So, I had a beer. I had quite a few snacks. I had quite a few bottles of water and sparkling water and a couple of coffees, and all that was fine. To me, the real economic value of this was what happened, pardon me, what happened that first day when check-in went wrong. Because I can't imagine dealing with the cluster mess that they made of my room reservation had we been out in the open lobby with a mile-long line behind me and an even worse trained customer service agent, where there was no place to have those conversations. So to me, the real value, and then when they didn't follow up, like they didn't keep their word about calling me and sending, to tell me a final price and then sending it to me when I would have had to have followed up by going into the open lobby and standing in line. So to me, the real value wasn't so much the free coffee and snacks, although that was lovely. The real value was a better environment to talk to people when there were problems with the bill, because of course there were problems with the bill.
Right. But then that raises the question, would you rather have the kind of customer service where those problems aren't going to happen, but not have the lounge, than have a nice out of public place for customer service bill to make an appearance? Right. And I hear you. I do. But yeah, I have to say, I'm not sure. I would need to know that I was going to be near that lounge more, because the items I got from the lounge, I could have purchased at full retail, even at casino prices. So I didn't get the value there. And again, they couldn't even help me with gift cards. So for me, that extra premium service wasn't very extra premium.
So to your point, yes, of course, I would have rather just had half reasonable service in the first place. And to the strength of the W, they had a coffee shop right there in their lobby that didn't have hideously long lines. And their lobby bar, which I didn't drink at this time, but have a couple, three previous trips, is also fantastic. So yeah, that particular hotel, rather than the Mandalay Bay, actually has some upscale options, which are perfectly good to just cash pay for the things you would get in the
Yeah.
lounge.
So I think we're going to put a pin in this conversation here, and listeners, we have a lot of good things to say about our experience staying in that property, but we're not going to do that now. We're going to come back in the next episode, and we're going to get into what we did like about the hotel and Mandalay and all of that. So you're going to have to tune in next week for that. But since we've dealt with Bill's customer service issues in 2 previous episodes, I kind of felt like, and I don't like our first trip back when we're going to be unpacking a pretty darn good trip to Vegas, to be negative. But since this had been hanging out there with 2 previous episodes, I imagine one of the listeners might have wondered after customer service parts 1 and 2, whether or not you got what you thought you were getting. And sadly, the answer is nope. All right. On that note, Bill, why don't we dive into some news?
And shockingly, our first story is from, wait for it, Scott at Vital Vegas, who reports that the Flamingo is saying adios to longtime margarita bar Carlos and Charlie's because there is apparently somehow a master plan for the Flamingo. So, John, 2 questions. 1, do you care that Carlos and Charlie's is going? And 2, do you believe there actually is a master plan for the Flamingo?
So, do I care about Carlos and Charlie's? Only in so much as I know there's a lot of people who love that place, and I hate to see anybody lose a place they love. But as far as I'm concerned, that is off-brand Senor Frogs, and even Senor Frogs was a shadow of itself in Vegas compared to in Mexico. So I don't care about that. What I do care about is this. I think the master plan for Caesars is to have restaurants that Caesars controls. And I don't think that's necessarily good. And I know some of the listeners are like, well, wait a minute. No, that's not true. They got Giada de Laurentiis, and they got like 25 places with British guy Gordon Ramsay. Sorry, I had a brain fart. It sucks getting old. They got Bobby Flay. They got Guy Fieri. Here's the thing, listeners. Those restaurants are partnership deals. Like, Guy Fieri's not paying rent. They have a contract where they're paying him to use his name. Sure, the celebrity chefs get some input on the menu. Sure, the celebrity chefs show up and put in appearances. I suppose they might even occasionally step into the kitchen and do some quality control. But those restaurants are fundamentally Caesar's restaurants. They are not run by a tenant who pays rent and then sets their own pricing and fees. And why that is important is there have been numerous stories, some we have shared, some that you may have heard from other places, of these Caesars venues charging really horrible, stupid fees and nickel and diming customers. And this means we're going to get more of that. We're going to get more of the 6% service charge and $1.95 refrigeration fee so that your ice can be cold, stuff like that. The sort of things that are driving customers nuts. So I don't have faith that Caesar's master plan is good for the consumer. We'll see.
So it's almost like they're as bad as everything we said earlier in the episode about MGM Rewards.
It's almost as if giant companies don't always make the best decisions for, the end user, the consumer. Yeah.
It could be. Well, what else do we have going on in the news, John?
Well, Scott also mentions, because we're stealing multiple stories from that guy, without naming the name of the restaurant, that the former Cosmo breakfast joint, Egg Slut, which I am proud to name, has found a new home at the Rio because, say what you will about whether or not you like that particular name, Bill, they make a mean breakfast sandwich. So does having an affordable, high-quality breakfast sandwich available make the Rio any more attractive to you?
So yes, but it does because that is absolutely a thing I would love for breakfast a lot of mornings. I just don't know that it's enough to make me actually stay there. I mean, in terms of breakfast, my single favorite breakfast in Las Vegas is Re-Raw. There in the shops at Mandalay between Mandalay Bay and the Luxor. And then my second favorite breakfast in Vegas is 7th and Carson, where oddly I got another full Irish breakfast. That's not always possible, right? And a breakfast sandwich would be a great choice. So, yeah, it's good. I don't know that it's enough all by itself to get me out to the Rio.
Not by itself, but you're about to have a James Tree Run steakhouse in there. They've redone their rooms. You're getting new bars. You're getting better gambling odds than you get on the Strip. Yeah, I'm going to be lobbying pretty hardcore for a guy's trip at the Rio. I think that sounds like a heck of a place to have a lot of fun. Although we're going to talk about a story next week that there's some financial signs of trouble at Rio and a few other properties. So that's what we call in the podcast business a tease for next week.
Outstanding. Well, in other news, and in the last story we stole from Vital Vegas, and we swear we've got other stories from other places, but it's that Project Barbecue in front of Circa is getting a glow up with a fresh look, some draft beer, and a revised menu. The location is outdoors on the Fremont Street Experience next to the main stage. So, John, I have never been to this restaurant, but I've looked at it 100 million times. And it's one of the things that I love about the Fremont Street Experience. Like there are a lot of just casual places to eat that are frankly pretty good. Have you ever been to this spot, or are you always busy going to like Evil Pie and all the other pizza joints?
Yeah, I've got a bad habit of just living on pizza. I will say my wife and I had to stay downtown, and our lunch plan was Project Barbecue, but we wound up at Dirt Dog. And Bill, I know you're not a big hot dog person. I am telling you, Dirt Dog is just different.
Hey, we don't talk about the size of our hot dogs on the podcast.
Well, that's true. We don't. But I will say that I've looked at Project Barbecue. The menu looks good. I look forward to seeing this happen. I did find out, I did some reading. It turns out Project Barbecue, and I learned this from Scott at Vital Vegas, so let's give him credit. They actually started off as legit a food truck aimed at construction workers. I'm going to trust that if it was good enough for the construction workers that it stayed around after construction was done, it's probably pretty good. So it's now on my places to check out. Bill, what about you? You feel like grabbing some barbecue downtown next trip?
So, as a native God-fearing Texan and thus richly schooled in beef barbecue, who now lives in Alabama, thus richly schooled in pork barbecue, I am suspicious, but yeah, I will try it out expressly because of what you said. I trust the construction workers who kept it open in the first place. I will absolutely give that one a shot.
Yeah, and I'm sure I get something like a sandwich and some mac and cheese. I'm not going to trust it to be next level Texas Hill Country. I don't expect Cooper's. I don't expect Salt Lick. But you know what? I bet it's better than Dickey's, and every Texan has had a mid-meal at Dickey's. Never terrible, never good, always it's fine. If it's better
Well,
than Dickey's, then it's a good spot.
and not every meal in Vegas can be the height of great cuisine. Sometimes you're drunken on Fremont Street and a sandwich is going to save your life.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And also there's Fat Sal's that opened up that we walked past on our last trip that I also want to check out. Speaking of sandwiches, let's jump on to one of your favorite stories, Bill. So according to the Las Vegas Review-Journal, the Athletics got a building permit from Clark County for the next 87 million chunk of concrete work, which tracks what we saw with our own eyes while we were there. And since we made the run sheet, so listeners, this is where I confess our sins. The first half of the podcast was recorded on Wednesday. It is now Saturday because it turns out men over 50 are bad at technology, so we are re-recording the news segment. In addition to permits, there are now photographs of vertical things going up at what will become a ballpark. Bill, are you getting excited for baseball on the Las Vegas Strip?
I absolutely am. For one thing, I think that will get my wife Rachel to go on another trip to Vegas with me eventually. I'd be like, "Sweetheart, we'll spend a pool day. We'll go watch a baseball game. It'll be fun." Yeah, no, I'm excited. So there's been a lot of speculation, particularly from our friend Scott, that this never happens, and I absolutely believe this happens. There are problems with the ownership group, and we've talked about this on like 5 or 6 previous episodes now, and I will keep saying it until somebody shows me to be wrong. The fact that there are problems with the ownership group, and Scott Fisher may or may not be the owner at first pitch in 2028, is a different thing from whether or not Major League Baseball lets this project fall through. And you and I both saw, what was it, 2, maybe 3 lanes of Las Vegas Boulevard at the Vegas Strip blocked off to allow for this construction to happen. More keeps happening. You can see actual work being done. No, I absolutely believe this. Is that pretty much where your head's at on this project, John?
It is, and I'm going to throw out a conspiracy theory that I did not do when we did this episode the other night, so this is brand new to Bill. I now have a contender. I think there is a potential angel investor who could save this project, who could buy a controlling interest from John Fisher, and who has never been able to buy a baseball team before because the other owners didn't want him around, but is the perfect person to save the day here and would instantly make me an A's fan. Bill, you want to guess?
Is it Jerry Jones? Because he makes great. It's Jerry Jones because he makes great football choices, and he's made you happy for years now.
I hope the Aggies don't win any more games all year. No, the obvious answer is Mark Cuban. So I'm going to call it now. This is my long shot bet. If they were taking odds on this, I think by the time the A's open up in 2028, Mark Cuban will be the majority owner. I have no information on that. I don't know anything. This is purely me speculating and pulling stuff out of my West Texas rear end. But I think that is the answer to the problem here because John Fisher doesn't have the money to do this, but Mark Cuban sure does.
Yeah, and I hope it's Jerry Jones, who it won't be, but I hope it is just because I want to see one of the veins in your head explode.
Dear God, keep Jerry away from any more teams. Actually, no, he could take over the Redskins or the Giants at any time he wants. Excuse me, the Commanders. The Commanders.
Yeah, fair. So also according to the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Resorts World revenue is up from the first quarter of this year, but down from the second quarter of last year. Gaming revenue is up 8% from the first quarter, but down 18% from the second quarter of last year. And occupancy was up from 78% in the first quarter to 80% in the second. That is, however, down from 90% in the second quarter. So what the statistics are showing, you hear about Las Vegas being dead, and it is absolutely not. I do think it's not doing as well as it was a while back, and that at least tracks with what I saw on our trip last weekend. So it's come up from its nadir this fall a little bit, but things at Resorts World, much like things on a lot of the rest of the Las Vegas Strip, just aren't as healthy as they were a year ago. So, John, when we were there last weekend, what was your impression of how busy Las Vegas was?
I mean, it's busy, but not as busy as we've seen it. So I did put up, I had a little fun. I did a Facebook short TikTok video showing, I did one of those Vegas is dead videos at 7:30 on a Sunday morning. which is to say that most of the pictures and videos you see showing that Vegas is dead, that content creator is out either on like a random Tuesday at 2 or 3 in the morning or 1 in the morning. Vegas is not dead. There are lots and lots and lots of people in Las Vegas. It's just there's not as many of there as there been before. We do the Labor Day trip almost every year. Labor Day is a banging time to go. Everywhere we went, there were tons of people. There were times that the lazy river at Mandalay Bay was not as much fun as it could be because it was wall-to-wall people and you were bumping up against people in the lazy river. It's not dead. But if you look at booking rates and revenue rates and any other metric you want to look at, other than gambling revenue, which we talked about the last episode, is oddly up. The number of visitors is down. That is 100% a fact. Vegas does need to make some changes to get more visitors in. That is 100% a fact. Vegas is hurting. It is not dead. It is not close to dead.
No, it is absolutely not. Well, John, I think our last story talks a little bit more about that theme. Do you want to run with it?
Sure. CBS News presented a complicated picture of Las Vegas visitors and revenue. In a story on August 30th, they said visitors were down for the 6th straight month, even though gambling revenue is oddly up. Traffic from Canada is down 18%, but visits from Mexico, the United Kingdom, and Australia are increasing. And I actually had a lovely conversation with a couple from Great Britain sitting in the sports book at Mandalay Bay, watching a soccer game before our brunch on Sunday morning. And I can attest that I ran into a number of foreign tourists in Vegas, but the Canadians, other than pennies to Vegas, seem to be staying away. So, yeah, Bill, I mean, it's not, there's silver linings to the cloud. Less people are coming, but people are gambling. So what do we make of that?
So, I think it goes with what I've judged as the incredibly risky strategy Las Vegas is pursuing of trying to drive more revenue from fewer visitors, which is great until like that guy stays home 1 month. Right. I will say that about a quarter of the listeners of this podcast are international listeners. And folks, first, thank you so much for listening to our podcast. And second, thank you very much for coming to visit us in the United States and spending your money. We appreciate it, and we hope you will keep coming. The international visitor picture, as this story shows, is really rather complicated. But it's not universal doom and gloom. Right. It really very much is a location specific sort of thing. And because this pairs well with the story before it. Yeah, Vegas was not dead. And there were absolutely people there. And there was absolutely an energy to it. There just wasn't the same energy that there usually is on a Saturday night of a holiday weekend. Like right. Saturday night of a holiday weekend, it should be hard to move through the casino floor under normal circumstances. And they didn't even have all the tables open. So, and that was right. At the Mandalay Bay, which is a big premier property. And apparently from at least some locations, international visitors are a part of that.
I will say when we were downtown on Sunday, one of the things I noticed is that the Golden Gate was busy, but not slammed. But when we walked through the first floor at Circa, every table game was full. Like all of a sudden you got a very clear picture of why Derek Stevens is closing table games at the Golden Gate, but keeping them at Circa. Because Golden Gate had customers, Circa was bumping. And I think it's a case of people are being selective about where they stay and where they gamble. There's going to be winners and losers, and I think the casinos are going to have to adapt. There's some degree to which some high rollers are there, and they're there for the taking. But I think some of these casinos need to think about it. There's only so many high rollers, and places that generally cater to lower rollers, like the Golden Gate, are having to change strategies because what was working isn't working anymore. And we're seeing Derek Stevens adapt to that. We'll see what other operators do. But it is fascinating to see that stays are down, travel at the airport is down, restaurants are down, but somehow gambling revenue is up. I would love to see how much of that is sports betting. I think there's been a lot of good movement in sports betting with baseball and other places. Keep in mind with some of these gambling apps that you have to be in a Nevada adjacent state in order to bet. I would love to see if sports betting is part of that bump. For now, I'm just speculating. But yeah, there's some interesting things in play.
There absolutely are. Well, John, does that wrap up our news stories for tonight?
Bill, it sure does, but I know after our recent trip, there's going to be a lot of new videos hitting Dine Drink Vegas, and probably some Dine Drink travel because you had some airline travel to get there and back. Why don't you tell our listeners where they can find more Dine Drink Vegas and Dine Drink travel content?
So, folks, you can find us on YouTube at Dine Drink Vegas, where our goal is to give you short and focused videos that give you the information that you need to plan your next trip. Most of those videos are 5 or 10 minutes about something like what is it like to stay in this hotel room or eat at this restaurant or things like that. You can also find us on YouTube at Dine Drink Vegas Shorts for our short format videos, including a tremendous train wreck at the Uber line, which John saw when he arrived in Las Vegas. You can find us on YouTube at Dine Drink Travel if you want to know more about air travel, or where over the next few weeks we anticipate we're going to start posting our videos about the drink of the day that we talk about here on the podcast, and maybe find a way to show you how those are constructed. You can find us on most social media platforms, including X, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Facebook at Dine Drink Travel. Although actually, I guess on Blue Sky, I am Dine Drink Bill. X is probably our most prominent platform, though, because that's where John and I make fun of one another, just like we do here on the podcast. John, where can they find you on X?
On X, I am at Dine Drink John. I'm happy to talk to you about Vegas, about adult beverages, about good food, and about why the Dallas Cowboys are going to absolutely break my heart this season, as they always do. We know you have a lot of podcast choices out there. We're so glad that you found ours and listened to it. If you have a friend who's planning a trip to Las Vegas and needs some helpful tips to get ready, or a mortal enemy who hates listening to fat, old, white Southern guys talk, either way, share this podcast with them, because you're helping us grow an audience, which means we can keep bringing you more content. Thank you so much for listening, and until the next episode, happy travels.